My fiance claimed we couldn't afford a honeymoon but bought his ex a $2,000 watch for closure. I sold the watch and booked myself a first-class solo trip to Greece. I'm Lena, 28, female, and I thought I was marrying a man who kept his promises. Not a poet, not a hero, just a decent guy who meant what he said and didn't have secret definitions for words like closure. We live in Columbus, in a townhouse that always smells like coffee because I grind beans too aggressively at 6 a.m. I'm a pediatric nurse. I come home with stickers on my scrubs and dried applesauce on my sleeve some nights. My fiancé, Evan, 31 male, works in sales for an industrial supply company, which is a fancy way of saying he's good at shaking hands and remembering people's dogs' names. He wears a watch every day, even though his phone is never out of his hand. I never thought the watch would become the symbol that cracked everything open. When he proposed last fall at the little pedestrian bridge by the river, I said yes with both hands, like I could hold the moment still if I gripped hard enough. We planned quick and practical. City Hall ceremony. Backyard reception at my friend Jess's place because she's got this maple tree that looks like a cathedral when it turns. The only thing I asked for, begged for, was a real honeymoon. Not Bali, not a yacht, just a week somewhere we could forget our phones and the laundry pile we always step around like it's a roommate. I kept sending him photos of white houses and blue domes in Santorini like a Pinterest troll. He'd heart the text and say, "Babe, soon." Then the budget happened. Or rather, his budget math happened. 2 months out, sitting at our kitchen table with a spreadsheet pulled up, he sighed the sigh of a weary provider and said, "We can't afford a honeymoon right now. Flights, hotels, Greece is crazy expensive. Maybe next year." I wanted to be mad. Instead, I made oatmeal and pretended cinnamon could cure resentment. I told myself love sometimes looks like later. 2 weeks after that, I found the receipt. It was folded into quarters and stuck in the pocket of his navy coat, the one he keeps on the hall hook because he's allergic to closets. I was fishing for chapstick before my night shift, and there it was. Reynoso Jewelers, 2,137.49. The description line read, "Women's Omega de Ville, rose gold." My mouth went dry in that instant. That specific made for TV dryness where your tongue turns into sand. For 3 full minutes I just stood there with the paper in my hand, hearing the kettle scream and not moving to take it off the burner. When he came home, he brushed past me with a breezy, "Hey babe," and kissed my hair. I held up the receipt like a cop with a badge. He froze, then did this little smile I later realized was his sales smile. "Oh, it's, okay, don't freak out, it's for Leah." Leah, 30, female, is the ex with the tragic Instagram. The one who posts black and white photos of her kneecaps with captions like, "Learning to choose myself." I've never met her, but I know her handwriting because Evan once brought home a box of his old college stuff, and her letters were inside, soft paper smelling like cheap perfume and laundry detergent. He said he kept them because he's sentimental about the past. I put them back in the box like I was tucking in a baby snake. "Why would you buy your ex a $2,000 watch?" I asked. My voice came out calm. Too calm. I didn't recognize it. "She's been having a hard time," he said, like he was explaining a charity gala. "She's moving on. I'm moving on. This is kind of like closure. It's symbolic." Symbolic of what? Your inability to delete numbers? I could feel that ugly heat build behind my eyes, the one that makes me talk with my hands too much. He did a whole performance. Contrite eyes, palms up, leaning against the counter like a man burdened by empathy. "It's just a gift. She helped me through some stuff years ago. The timing is bad, I'll admit that, but Lena, you know we can't go to Greece right now. I just wanted to do one kind thing. It doesn't change us." He said us like we were a brand. He said kind like the opposite of it wasn't hanging in the air. I walked to the bedroom and opened his top dresser drawer. There it was, inside the black Reynoso box, cushioned like something holy. Rose gold face, tiny diamond markers. The second hand ticked smoothly. No stutter. I hate that I noticed that. I hate that I admired the engineering of the thing while my life's metaphor was flashing in my face. "I'm not comfortable with this," I said, softer, almost pleading with the universe to rearrange itself. He came up behind me, arms sliding around my waist. "Please don't make a big deal. I'll give it to her this weekend and it'll be done." Somewhere in the building, a neighbor slammed their door, and the sound split me cleanly into who I was before, and the woman who, very quietly, put the watch back in the box and started counting seconds. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened, like we hadn't just argued over him dropping $2,000 on a gift for another woman while telling me we couldn't even afford a honeymoon. He was making coffee, humming, scrolling on his phone. I just stood there watching him, stomach twisted, realizing something ugly. He didn't feel guilty. When I asked, again, how much he spent, he had the audacity to roll his eyes and say, "I told you it's not about the money, it's about closure." Closure, apparently, costs $1,995 plus tax, gift-wrapped, with a heartfelt note. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went quiet. which freaked him out more than yelling ever could. That's when he got defensive, fast. "I don't get why you're making this a thing," he snapped. "She was a huge part of my life. I needed to do something to make peace with it." Peace? He was acting like their breakup was some war crime he needed to atone for. And me? I was just the fiancé funding his emotional charity work, apparently. For the rest of the day, he tried to smooth things over, texting me random TikToks, bringing home takeout from my favorite Thai place. But I wasn't biting. Because here's the thing. I'd seen his budget spreadsheets. I knew we could afford a honeymoon. He just didn't want to spend that kind of money on us. That realization, it hit hard. Like maybe I wasn't the person he pictured at the end of his life. Maybe I was just the convenient next chapter after his big love story with the ex. 2 days later, the watch arrived. It was obnoxious. Polished metal, diamond accents, the kind of thing that practically screams, "I'm better than you." I knew instantly it wasn't just about closure. This was a flex. I asked him when he was giving it to her. He said Saturday. "We're just going to meet for coffee. She's moving to another state, so..." That's when something inside me clicked. Like a switch flipping. I smiled, genuinely smiled, and said, "Cool." He looked relieved, thinking I was finally dropping it. But I wasn't dropping anything. That night, after he went to bed, I sat in the living room with that stupid watch box in my lap. I ran my fingers over the packaging, imagining her smug little face when she opened it. And I thought about my non-existent honeymoon, about the year I'd spent planning every tiny wedding detail while he apparently saved his grand gestures for someone else. So I made a decision. The next morning, I accidentally knocked the watch box into my tote bag while I was tidying up. He didn't notice. It's amazing what you can get away with when a man assumes you're too emotional to be strategic. By lunch, I was in the jewelry store getting a buyback quote. They counted out $400 in cash right there on the counter. And as I slid the bills into my wallet, I swear I felt lighter than I had in months. That's when the seed of the real plan started forming. I didn't go straight home after selling the watch. I sat in my car in the parking lot, air conditioning blasting, staring at the cash like it was radioactive. My hands were shaking, not from guilt, but from adrenaline. I had just committed a kind of quiet domestic heist, and it felt good. The first thing I did was open my laptop in the Starbucks down the street and start looking at flights. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second, because this was the moment where I could still back out. I could still be the good fiancé who swallows the betrayal and hopes it doesn't happen again. But then I pictured Leah, sitting across from Evan at that cafe, opening a gift I funded, smiling that pitying smile women reserve for the new girlfriend they think is a downgrade. My chest burned. Yeah, no. Santorini flights were expensive, but first class? First class was obscene, and I clicked it anyway. The total after booking was just over the watch value. My credit card took the hit for the difference, but my brain didn't even blink at it. I booked a boutique hotel too. Whitewashed balconies, ocean views, breakfast delivered on trays with tiny glass jars of jam. The works. I didn't tell a soul. Not Jess, not my mom, not even my coworker who usually gets the live feed on my personal disasters. I wanted this to marinate in secret. When I got home that night, Evan was on the couch watching some docuseries about billionaires. He barely glanced up when I walked in. "You okay now?" he asked, like I'd had a hormonal episode and gotten over it. I smiled, my new, dangerous smile. "Yeah, I'm fine." Over the next few days, I played my role. I let him think I was dropping the subject. Even asked if he needed help wrapping her gift, knowing full well she'd never see it. He relaxed, started making wedding playlist suggestions again, even kissed me in the kitchen while making pasta like we were back in the honeymoon stage. On Friday night, he left his phone on the counter while showering. It lit up with a text from Leah. "Excited to see you tomorrow. I'll bring your favorite muffins." I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I'd already cut the fuse. I was just waiting for him to notice the bomb was gone. Saturday afternoon, I was running errands, while he was supposedly at the coffee meetup. In reality, I was at the mall picking up a new suitcase. Bright teal, hard shell, impossible to miss on an airport carousel. When he got home, he looked off. Not mad, not exactly, just unsettled. He didn't mention the watch. I didn't ask. That night, while he slept, I printed my travel itinerary and slid it into the inside pocket of the teal suitcase. Just the dates, the hotel, and the word Santorini in bold at the top, because when he found out, I wanted him to know exactly where I was, and exactly what I'd chosen over him. He found out on a Tuesday. I'd left the teal suitcase in the corner of the bedroom on purpose. Half-packed, the zipper open just enough for the itinerary to peek out. He thought I was at an early shift that morning, but I'd traded with a coworker and was at Jess's instead, sipping coffee and waiting for the inevitable call. It didn't take long. My phone lit up with his name, vibrating so hard it nearly slid off the table. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, another call. Then a text. "What the F is this?" Then another. "You booked a trip? With what money?" I typed back one word. Closure. Radio silence for maybe 10 minutes, And then my phone started blowing up like a slot machine. Text after text, a flood of all caps fury, alternating between "you're insane" and "how could you do this to me?" and "we have a wedding in 2 months." I was still reading when Jess's window rattled. I looked up and, no joke, Evan was in her driveway. Jess muttered, "Oh, hell no," and stood like she was ready to body block him. But I waved her off. I wanted to see him. He didn't knock, he banged. Fist to wood. 3 rapid-fire hits that made Jess's cat bolt under the couch. When I opened the door, his face was blotchy, the vein in his temple pulsing like it might burst. "Where's the watch?" he demanded. "No, hello, no, why are you here instead of at work?" "Just straight to the wound." "Sold it," I said, calm. "Cool," like I was telling him we were out of milk. His voice went up half an octave. "You sold it? That was a gift. For your ex." "Yeah, I know. So I exchanged it for something I actually want. A week in Greece." Jess was behind me now, arms crossed, like moral backup. He looked at her, then back at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. Panic. The kind of panic people get when they realize the narrative they've been rehearsing won't land here. "You had no right," he hissed. "That wasn't yours to sell." "Neither was our honeymoon budget," I shot back. That's when his control slipped. He grabbed the edge of Jess's side table and sent a potted plant crashing to the floor. Dirt everywhere. The cat shot upstairs. Jess shouted, "You need to leave, now!" But he ignored her, stepping closer to me, his voice dropping to that cold, tight register that's worse than yelling. "You're making a huge mistake," he said. "If you go on that trip, don't expect me to be here when you get back." I smiled. That's kind of the point. Jess's neighbor must have called someone because a police cruiser rolled up not 5 minutes later. Evan backed off fast, muttering something about how I'd regret this as he left. But standing there, my heart still pounding, I realized something important. Regret was already behind me. All that was left now was follow-through. Update 1. All right, checking back in because apparently my last post lit the entire comment section on fire. First, to the person who said, "Girl, that suitcase is your mic drop. Yeah, you nailed it." I didn't realize how satisfying it would be just seeing that teal shell sitting there, practically humming with anticipation. Every time I walk past it, I feel my blood pressure drop. A lot of you guessed Evan wouldn't take this well. Congratulations, you're psychic. He showed up at my friend Jess's house like a storm in human form, banged on the door, demanded to know where the watch was, and then proceeded to redecorate her floor with a potted plant. Bonus points for doing this in front of a witness who doesn't like him on a good day. Some of you said, "He's going to try to stop you from going." Oh, he's already hinted at it, threatening to be gone when I get back. Which, okay, that's not the warning he thinks it is. I'm not changing my flights. In fact, I've upgraded a few things. Found a guided tour that takes you through the quieter parts of Santorini, booked a wine tasting at a cliffside vineyard, and reserved a catamaran sunset cruise. Yes, I'm going to post photos. Yes, he's going to see them. To the handful of DMs calling me petty, let's get this straight. Petty would have been me engraving the watch with "Thanks for the honeymoon, Leah," before selling it. This is just redistribution of emotional labor. And just so it's clear, this isn't about the money anymore. It's about the message. He was willing to pour thousands into a gesture for a woman who's no longer in his life, but when it came to building a memory with the woman he was about to marry, suddenly we're in tight times. That's not a budget issue. That's a priorities issue. Anyway, the trip's in less than 2 weeks. I'll pack the day before because I'm not giving him the satisfaction of thinking I'm nervously prepping in secret. He already knows I'm going, and that's the part that's eating him alive. Next update will probably be from Greece. Or maybe sooner, if Evan decides to escalate before I leave. Judging by his track record, I'm betting on sooner. He made his move 3 nights before my flight. I'd just gotten home from a late shift, tossed my keys in the bowl by the door, and kicked off my shoes when I realized the teal suitcase was gone. Not in the corner where I'd left it, not in the closet, gone. My stomach went cold. I went room to room, flinging open doors, scanning under the bed like maybe it had just rolled away on its own. Nothing. I didn't have to guess long. My phone buzzed with a text from Evan. "Your trip is over. Grow up." I called him immediately. "Where's my suitcase?" "I took it," he said, casual as hell, like we were talking about borrowing my charger. "I'm holding on to it until you cancel your flights. You're not blowing our wedding budget on some ego trip." The fact that he could say, "our wedding," after everything was almost impressive in a sociopathic way. "You stole my property," I said, voice flat. "It's our property," he shot back. "We're engaged. That makes it joint. Try that in court," I snapped, and hung up. I was shaking, but not with fear. With that electric, boiling anger that makes your hands itch to do something. So I did. I called Jess, explained, and within 15 minutes she was pulling up outside. We drove straight to Evan's place. I didn't knock. I pounded, loud enough for the nosy old guy across the hall to open his door and stay there like he was watching cable. Evan finally appeared, holding the suitcase like a trophy. "You're not getting this until you—" I stepped forward, grabbed the handle, and yanked. He didn't let go, and for a second we were in this ridiculous tug-of-war in his doorway. Then he made the mistake of trying to jerk it back too hard. The case swung open, and half my clothes spilled into the hall. Bras, sandals, a sun hat rolling toward his neighbor's feet. The neighbor just raised his eyebrows like drama and didn't move. I scooped my stuff up, shoved it back in the case, and snapped it shut. If you touch my things again, I'll file a police report. And I will follow through. He laughed. Too loud. Too forced. What are you going to tell them? That your fiancé was trying to stop you from making the dumbest mistake of your life? I dragged the suitcase down the hall without answering. But inside, I knew something had shifted. That was his last real play to stop me. And now he'd crossed into territory where his behavior was just evidence. When I got home, I locked the case in my car trunk. If he wanted it now, he'd have to break into a vehicle, and I wanted him to try. The next morning, he sent a final text. When you come back, don't expect me here. I stared at it for a while before typing back, perfect. The morning of my flight felt like the first real breath I'd taken in months. I wore the most comfortable black dress I owned, hair in a braid, sunglasses perched on my head like armor. The teal suitcase rolled behind me like a declaration. I'd half expected Evan to show up at the airport for one last scene, maybe with some grand, self-pitying speech to lure me back, but there was nothing. Just the steady hum of check-in lines and the muted clink of coffee cups at the gate cafe. First-class boarding felt decadent. Wide leather seats, champagne before takeoff, the flight attendant calling me Ms. Miller, with that gentle smile like I belonged here. I sipped my drink and for the first time thought, I do. By the time we landed in Athens, I'd already posted the first photo to Instagram, a shot of the airplane wing against an endless stretch of blue, captioned, "Closure looks good at 35,000 feet. Santorini was everything I'd dreamed of. Whitewashed walls glowing in the sun, cobalt domes against a sea so blue it hurt to look at. My hotel room had a balcony that felt like it was floating above the water. I ordered breakfast to the room every morning and ate it barefoot in a robe, legs propped on the railing, watching fishing boats drift by. And yes, I documented everything. Not in a desperate, curated influencer way, just moments that made me feel alive. A selfie on the cliffs at Oya, the table set for one at the cliffside vineyard, the catamaran deck at sunset, the water blurring gold and violet. Every post was public. Every post tagged the location. Every post visible to Evan. I didn't have to wait long for a reaction. On day 3, a friend back home DM'd me. Evan's been blowing up Facebook, posting all kinds of vague crap about betrayal, gold diggers, real love doesn't cost money. That made me laugh harder than it should have, especially knowing exactly what he'd been willing to spend on real love when it wasn't me. That night, after a little too much Acertico wine, I posted a story, just my hand holding a glass against the sunset. The caption, "Here's to spending the budget on someone who deserves it." The next morning, I woke up to 5 missed calls and a single text from him. "Hope you're enjoying this, because when you get home, you'll have nothing left." I didn't answer. Not because I was scared, but because I'd already decided home wasn't going to mean him anymore. By the end of the week, between the glow of the trip and the clarity of distance, the idea of going back to my old life felt like squeezing into a pair of shoes 2 sizes too small. I didn't want them. I didn't need them. I was already planning my next step, and it wasn't a wedding. Update 2. Checking in from Santorini because, honestly, I'm still riding the high and y'all deserve the tea while it's hot. First of all, yes, I've seen the screenshots. Apparently, Evan's been on a social media crusade, painting himself as the tragic groom-to-be abandoned by his selfish fiancé. My personal favorite was the post where he quoted some breakup song lyric about watching love walk away over a stock photo of a stormy ocean. If you knew him, you'd know he's never even been to an ocean. Second, yep, I'm not going back to him. Not to talk it out, not to salvage the wedding, not even to get the last word. The only thing waiting for him when I land is an apartment missing my stuff and a manila envelope on the counter. Inside, the engagement ring, the vendor cancellations, and a short note that says, "Enjoy your closure." To the commenter who said, "You need to make sure this trip pays off emotionally, not just financially." Mission accomplished. Being here, away from all that noise, I realized it wasn't just about the watch or the honeymoon. It was about how small I'd let myself feel for so long, twisting myself into knots to be reasonable while he made grand gestures for someone else. I'm done being reasonable, and for those worried he'll try something when I get back, don't be. Jess and I already moved my essentials into her place before I left. The rest is boxed up and sitting in a storage unit under my name only. Even if he wanted to confront me, he wouldn't know where to start. Oh, and one last thing. The bright teal suitcase that started all this, I'm not bringing it home. I'm leaving it here with the hotel concierge, stuffed with Greek chocolates, postcards, and a couple bottles of wine for the staff. They've been incredible, and it feels right to pass the color on, like shedding a skin. When I get back, I'm starting fresh. New apartment, new bank account, new passport stamps, and Evan? Well, let's just say I hope he enjoys explaining to Leah why the watch she never got turned into the trip he can't stop watching from his phone. I landed back in the States on a warm Thursday evening. Tan lines sharp on my shoulders, hair smelling faintly of salt and sunscreen. The airport felt almost offensively ordinary after a week of cliffside sunsets and late-night wine on balconies. But I had one last act to pull off before the curtain closed. Jess was waiting at arrivals with my storage unit key in her pocket and a look on her face like she'd been holding in gossip for days. "He's been circling," she said, as soon as I slid into her car. "Texting mutual friends, calling your mom." "My mom?" I cut in. "Yeah." She told him she wasn't getting in the middle, and he hung up on her. That made me smile. Even Mom was done with his theatrics. We swung by my old apartment. Our apartment, technically, while I knew he'd still be at work. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and was immediately hit by the stale air of a place that hadn't been lived in, just existed. The couch was still crooked from the night he'd tried to stop me taking the suitcase. A layer of dust coated the coffee table. It felt less like a home and more like a stage set, waiting for someone to start the scene. I didn't touch anything. I just walked into the kitchen, set the manila envelope right in the middle of the counter, and placed the engagement ring on top like a paperweight. The note inside was short: "Enjoy your closure. P.S. The honeymoon was amazing." I left the keys beside it, locked the door behind me, and didn't look back. 2 hours later, my phone started lighting up. First, a missed call, then another, then the texts. "WTF is this? Are you serious? You're throwing away everything for a vacation? You embarrassed me. You humiliated me." I didn't respond. That's when the escalation started. He posted a 10-slide Instagram story. Screenshots of our old texts, cropped just enough to make me look cold, interspersed with moody selfies. The last slide was just the word "fake" in white font on a black background. Jess and I were eating takeout when the banging started. Not at her front door, thank God, but on her downstairs neighbor's door. Evan's voice, slurred, carrying up through the floorboards. Jess peeked through the blinds. "He's wearing the shirt from your engagement photos," she whispered. We called the cops before he could get creative. By the time the cruiser pulled up, he was sitting on the curb, head in his hands, muttering to himself. They told him to leave or be arrested for trespassing. He left. Back upstairs, Jess handed me a glass of wine. "You realize that was his final tantrum, right?" I did. Because underneath all the noise, social media rants, late-night pounding on strangers' doors, was the quiet truth he'd never admit. I'd taken the one thing he couldn't buy back: my absence. 2 weeks later, I was in my new apartment. A little one-bedroom on the 3rd floor, nothing fancy, but the walls were mine and the air felt light. The first thing I bought was a massive plant for the corner of the living room, partly because I liked it, partly because I knew Evan had a habit of knocking plants over when he was mad. This one was safe. My mornings became simple rituals: coffee in a chipped mug from Santorini, barefoot on the balcony, scrolling through travel blogs instead of text threads full of relationship postmortems. My phone was quiet now, except for the occasional meme from Jess or a "how's it going?" from my mom. Evan didn't try to contact me again directly. I heard through a mutual friend that he'd shown up at a bar wearing that same engagement photo shirt, telling anyone who'd listen that he'd dodged a bullet. If that's how he needed to frame it to save face, fine. Let him have his bullet story. I knew the truth. I'd kept the teal suitcase out of sentiment. Well, not the suitcase itself. That was still in Santorini making some hotel concierge's day. But the idea of it. I printed one of my favorite trip photos. Me, windswept, laughing on the cliffs at Oya, and framed it on my dresser. That was my closure, hanging right where I could see it every morning. The wedding date came and went without me noticing until Jess sent a text. "Congrats on your non-anniversary." I laughed so hard I almost spilled my coffee. On a whim, I booked another trip, this time to Lisbon, solo again. It wasn't about running away from something. It was about running toward the version of myself I'd almost forgotten existed, the version who didn't wait around for permission to live. One night, sitting on the balcony with a blanket over my shoulders, I thought about that watch, about how, in the beginning, I'd been furious at what it symbolized: misplaced loyalty, public disrespect, a marriage that would have been a slow bleed. But now, I almost felt grateful for it, because without that stupid rose gold face ticking away in his drawer, I might still be there, making oatmeal, telling myself love sometimes looks like later. Turns out, love looks a lot more like a boarding pass with your own name on it. I didn't get the honeymoon I'd planned. I got something better: my freedom, my peace, and the kind of closure you don't hand to someone else. You keep it, wear it, live it, and that's the part no one can take back.